Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's show. Because today on the show, as you may guess, we have the one, the only Mr. Ralph Bond. He'll be joining us here in just a moment. He is our resident science and technology trends correspondent. And he joins us every single Friday to talk about a number of stories. And those stories are anything that, well, technology touches. And, sometimes it's science, but of course the two go hand in hand. Not very often you see major scientific breakthroughs that didn't involve, AI, supercomputers, or, just something really cool like that. But either way, runs the gamut, and ladies and gentlemen, you're going to want to check out a number of these stories. So with that being said, computeramerica.com. Pardon our dust, we got it back up and running, and I got to say, from running a website, man, just like you install these little plugins, like, you do these little things to make the site look better or work better or just be more efficient. And then eventually somewhere in the background, they're like, oh yeah, all these things are actually going to just destroy the website. So we have disabled like every plugin. We have disabled like everything. It's just the basic website, and you can kind of see that it needs some reorganizing, stuff like that. So we're going to work on that this weekend. And hopefully by the time you hear this, actually, a lot of it will be fixed. But Computer America is, of course, up and at the top. Don't need a plugin because it's just one of the links. Click the Ralph Bond segment, and that, of course, will take you to all the show notes, past, present, future. It's Ralph's little corner on our little site. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring him on and just have fun with it, because it's a nice, relaxing Friday. It's a good way to kind of lead you into the weekend. And ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring on Ralph Bond. Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you been?
Portland, Oregon area, we've been iced in. Not snowed in. We did have snow, but the ice is the thing that's so awful, makes transportation zero. The schools have been closed, driving my son and daughter insane as their kids have been home all week, on and on. But we're going to have a positive, uplifting experience every Friday morning here. Ben and I bring you great stories about science and technology trends. We look at stuff in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it, all across the board. And we do have something called show notes on the website. And those are my notes for the show. I find articles, I highlight the key points in each article. I embed links, pictures, so forth and so on. If you want to dive deeper into each story, you can at your time when you want to. Just come out to the website, computeramerica.com, get those show notes. It's really a helpful way to augment what we're going to do, because we're just going to give you kind of like the Reader's Digest greatest hits of each story.
Absolutely. And by the way, before we really jump into it, I just want to say something about, your grandkids, being home all the time. Obviously, like, I grew up in Florida, so, there were some years where we had many days off due to hurricanes and things like that. Yeah, and that was still kind of throw a wrench in things. But here locally, there was a snow event, and instead of saying school canceled, and like on the local news, and it would kind of have the side scroll of all the schools that were canceled, they said virtual learning, or like e-learning day, and kids can't even get a snow day anymore, because you got to stay home and you got to log on and you got to do your schoolwork virtually. Not saying it's the worst thing in the world for kids to go to school. That's definitely better than not going to school. But I got to say, even a snow day, Ralph, is no longer, a surprise time off for kids.
Yeah, you're right, Ben. If those kids are old enough to be in regular school, I'm talking about 3, 4.5-year-olds. and one 2.5-year-old between my son and daughter and their respective spouses. So that's why they've been going nuts, because those little guys aren't even in kindergarten yet. So their daycare is canceled, all that stuff. So that was their issue. But on to positive technology and science news.
Yeah, and you have surprisingly come up with a number of them. The first one, you of course, and I say of course because for those who can watch the video portion, we're going to be showing some of the show notes and the articles and the videos.
Right.
Very helpful, very cool. But if you're listening to us, trust us, you're going to get most of the information. But with that being said, the first story has to do with CES, and I love that you have some covering that as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into story number one.
Yeah, as you just mentioned, this was something that was showcased at CES. Its the headline here is WaterCube, world's first stress home, air-to-water generator makes 120 gallons of water a day. And there's some qualifiers to this we'll get into in the story. Comes from interestingengineering.com, which is a wonderful website. And again, on the show notes, we have links and so forth. There's even a YouTube video about this product as well. So at last week's CES, a company called Genesis Systems showcased its WaterCube, model WC-100. We'll just say WaterCube. It has been promoted as the world's first and only home device that generates water from air, harnessing 120 gallons a day of pure, fresh water 24 hours a day. And my note, as we'll learn later, under ideal conditions. And I also want to stop for a second and say, Ben, you know this, working with us together for a number of years, there have been several technology innovations that will draw water out of the air. So they're not trying to say we're the first people who have ever figured this out. No, what they're saying is we have packaged it in such a way that we think it could be viable for a residential or small business or other purposes in a form factor that's small enough and can work reasonably well under good conditions. And we'll explain that a little bit later.
So much of the things that you find for us, and so much of the news out there are proof of concept things that are just done for the first time. This is the second part. This is the some could argue even the harder part, which is bringing these innovations to market. And this is an example of that. Point. So
that's right on target there, Ben. Because again, we've been talking over the last several years about experiments and ideas and trials of this and that, pulling water out of the air and so forth on large scale usually. And then this is a productized, commercialized version of that technology scaled down for deployment in small situations. So the good point. So the design is an automated system that uses the moisture present in the air, employing a condensation method to harness drinkable water through the company's proprietary technology. So one of the things that was a little frustrating for me was because it's proprietary technology, they're very close to the vest on this. If you go to their website, you're not really going to get a lot of nits and grits on actually how this works. But with that said, it's still kind of a fun and interesting trend story. So the WaterCube employs fans to bring air in and then a proprietary process to remove the water from the air, filter it, and deliver pure water. Additionally, and this is kind of cool, you can daisy chain these units, these water cubes. They can be combined to increase water output for larger households, or I would say larger facilities or larger situations, and we'll get into that a little bit more later here. So per the video shot at CES last week, and we have that link, the system uses a UV purifier and a high micron rating filter. And air is drawn in on one side and passed through the filters. Now, in the show notes, if you want to dig into what's a UV air purifier and what do you mean by micron relative to filtration and so forth, I've got some side notes there. We're not going to take time now to go through all that, but you can check that out if you come out to computeramerica.com and get the show notes. So again, it uses a UV purifier and a high micron rated filter. And air is drawn in on one side and passed through the filters. Okay, so the firm says they have successfully yielded 100 plus gallons of pure water per day. Now, here's the qualifier. This data is driven by testing the WaterCube at 80 degrees Fahrenheit and at 60% relative humidity. So you were talking about Florida, Ben. This could be great.
Exactly.
Great for an environment like that, right? But right now here in Portland, Oregon, it's about 30 degrees. And well, the humidity is way up there, but the temperature is not so great. Anyway, the WaterCube has been crafted to operate in humidity ranges between 40% to 100% with ideal climatic conditions involving temperatures greater than 59 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's a reality check there for you. So some regions of our country, maybe during the summer might be fine, but year round, not so much the case. But still, I think it's a fascinating trend to commercialize this technology. And furthermore, the water produced meets the water quality standards with that required by the U.S. National Science Foundation and international standards as well. So these folks have really thought this through in terms of making sure that the output water would pass international and our country's regulations regarding that. And according to the official website of Genesis Systems, and I encourage you guys to go out and check this website out, it is very interesting. The WC-100 WaterCube will cost $19,995. So timeout, you might be thinking, well, this was great, but gosh almighty, almost $20,000 for this thing. And do I really need it? I think the emphasis on home use, I don't want to be negative and say it's a missed opportunity. I think this is great for emergency situations, Ben. You talked about hurricanes. Well, think of what's going on in the Middle East where there's devastation and so forth, or areas that have been hit by some natural disaster and they need water. If you could put these devices, they're small enough to be transported easily in large aircraft or trucks or whatever, and get them, and they can be daisy chained together, right? You could create a great water output solution for emergency purposes. So I would think the emergency agencies around the world would go, this product's for us. Let's go. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, there's certain, there's obviously an application for that kind of thing. The price tag is very much up there, which, you kind of expect with something, so brand new. And like honestly, I was kind of thinking like, RV camping kind of thing, where so you don't have to bring all your water with you. You just have something on board that can, you put up your solar panel and your water just kind of makes it itself. The price tag though is so prohibitive, but yeah, for maybe people who have Ralph, I hate to say it, but like the group, the Doomsday Preppers, they had the show on for a while, Doomsday Preppers, like having something like this in the back pocket. You always think that people are crazy, but at the same time, they're also the ones that have 3 years supply of, freeze dried meals in their pantry. Yeah. This is going to appeal to someone. In the United States, we are lucky enough to have good drinking water and tap water in most cities. That's not delivered by lead. But yeah, we have lots of water. So water isn't that expensive here in the U.S. So it's not really made for the U.S. market. I kind of think off grid and stuff like that. I don't know, Ralph. I completely agree with you.
You're right. You're right. I absolutely agree. And again, in terms of deploying these devices, as I suggest, as you would also agree for emergency situations and so forth, you do need electricity. So you'd either have to have an independent fossil fuel generator or something going on, or I don't know if you could get enough solar battery to run one of these things, fine. But that is a qualifier. But again, I still think it's interesting. This is first, smaller scale, commercialized product, albeit too expensive for most situations.
I'm sure if you're looking for a competitive product that does the same thing, you're probably looking at industrial, kind of purposes, and probably in the hundreds of thousands. So
right, exactly right. So it's a trend, and that's the point here. Absolutely. It is a deliverable, but it's a trend. It's the twinkle of the eye. Think of your first mobile phone, which cost a tremendous amount of money and was the size of a brick. This is kind of analogous to that. Who knows where we'll be in 10 years with this kind of stuff? It might become very, very affordable.
And and this is definitely the fun kind of stuff that you can find at CES. So thank you for for highlighting that as well. So that's story number 1, ladies and gentlemen. You can check out the show notes. Story number 2, we're going to talk about at the show, there was a lot of talk about different displays, and you've probably heard of micro LEDs, which I think is Samsung's. You've heard of OLEDs, which is like LG and other companies. LEDs are super important, and everyone's trying to come up with the next best LED. So story number 2 should be very interesting to you because, hey, you might see it in the next big thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to give a geek out warning at the very beginning of this. This gets a little, techie, as it will be the case with the last story too, which is a medical technology story. So just be aware, this is very geeky. I'll do my best on this. So the headline is Perovskite. That's Perovskite, Perovskite LED stack emits light 1,000 times brighter than a regular OLED. So the key trend here comes PeLEDs. Okay, so that's perovskite LEDs. And I got this from optics.org. And believe me, it's a very geeky website, very geeky source. We've got some links here for you on a couple of other things to look at as well to learn more about this. So I do need to sort of set the stage for this, Ben. So bear with me. This is geeky. So OLEDs, of course, are widely used in products such as smartphone screens and employ organic thin film materials as a semiconductor. Okay, wait a minute. First, let's do a little refresh here. First, what are OLEDs? So OLED stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode. Each pixel in an OLED display is made of a material that glows when you, the author said, jab it. I thought that was funny. That sounds very British. Rather stimulate it with electricity, okay? And what's the organic part? You think, organic? Is it like a vegan LED? Well, wait a minute. No, the specific electroluminescent materials used in organic LED displays are organic compounds, which means they contain carbon plus some other ingredients. Each color requires a different organic compound. Think about how many colors are displayed on these OLED displays, and that should be impressive, right? But here's the problem. However, their maximum brightness of OLEDs remains limited. For example, when one considers trying to read a smartphone screen under very sunny conditions. But I still kind of marvel at my iPhone's display. But anyway, meanwhile, perovskites, a class of materials with a specific crystal structure, are proving their worth beyond solar cells. So time out. Ben, you may recall in the last year or so, we've talked about a number of efforts in the solar panel industry to employ perovskites as a way to improve performance, make them less expensive, on, mainly improve yield. Okay, so what these researchers are saying, and we'll get to this in a moment, is, oh, wait a minute, maybe this can help out in display technology and projection technology. Okay, going on with excellent optoelectrical properties, low cost processability, and efficient charge transport. These materials have emerged in the last 10 years as interesting candidates for light emission applications such as LEDs. All right, so again, bear with me, a little more education here. What is a perovskite LED? First, what is perovskite? We've talked about it before, but just a refresh here. Perovskite is a mineral composed of calcium titanate. It is named after Russian mineralogist, if I could say that, Lev Perovsky. Perovskites are a family of crystals that show promising properties for applications in nanotechnology, especially nanostructured solar cells, as we just mentioned before. That's where the interest has been mostly with the application of perovskites in that world. So in most perovskite LEDs, electrodes sandwiching the light emitting material deliver charges, negatively charged electrons and positively charged electron vacancies. Oh, this is very geeky. I apologize. When the charges meet at the center of the sandwich, electrons fill the vacancies and give up a bit of their energy as a ding, ding, ding photon of light. All right. The color of the photon depends on the perovskite's chemical constituents, enabling researchers to tune the color by changing the perovskite's recipe. And I've got links here. We've got a diagram that shows one of these perovskite stacks and so forth. And you can check that out as well. And I'm not going to read this, but I just want to also note you were rattling off, not rattling in a disparaging way, but listing at the beginning the different LED technologies. There's also something out there called QLED. Wow, really quantum Anyway, you can get into that. We've got details on that in the show notes. We're not going to plow through that because it's not directly germane to the story. But I thought, wait a minute, let's flesh out the whole LED
People
world
are always
here.
wondering, like, where's my new,
Yeah.
where are my new batteries? Where are my new LEDs? Where's like the next big thing? And the answer is, they're working on it very, very hard. There's a lot of competing technologies out there. They're just trying to see which one, kind of outcompetes. So, yeah.
Yes. And QLED is pretty cool because it's quantum dot LED. You got to love that. Anyway, okay. Wow, we just plowed through a whole lot of setup, folks, and it was very geeky. Finally, here's the big news. Here we go. Belgium-based research and innovation hub, the Inter-University Microelectronics Center, or the acronym IMEC, has developed a new type of perovskite LED stack as part of its Ultra Lux project, which it says emits light 1,000 times brighter than state-of-the-art organic LEDs. So they're only comparing against state-of-the-art OLEDs, okay, not the other technologies. This result, say its creators, is a pivotal milestone towards a perovskite injection laser, promising exciting applications in image projection, environmental sensing, medical diagnostics, and beyond, even into commercial handheld products as well. And there's an optional side note in the show notes. When I saw perovskite injection laser, wait a minute, what's an injection laser? I've got a definition here for you with a link. If you want to get into that in the show notes, you can dive into that. But going on with the news, in the Ultralux project, the Inter-University Microelectronics Center team showed for the first time a perovskite LED architecture with low optical losses and pumped these perovskite LEDs to current densities that support the stimulated emission of light. And the novel architecture of transport layers, transparent electrodes, and perovskite as a semiconductor active material can operate at electrical current densities tens of thousands of times higher than conventional OLEDs can. So, folks, this has been a torturously geeky thing here, but it's an important thing. If nothing else, get ready for perovskite LEDs. I'm sure over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see this technology play a role in many, many products and technologies.
The article has abbreviated to PeLED, and I'm guessing if we have like OLEDs, which I'm sure some people have heard kind of OLED TVs, those would be PeLEDs TVs.
Yeah.
But still, no, all of your background, very, very relevant, and it helps us kind of understand that, this is not some new marketing thing, because a lot of what, happens in TVs is kind of a marketing thing, but this is an actual new technology that's been explored and worked on. So still very, very cool. And brighter televisions doesn't necessarily mean, ladies and gentlemen, that, you're going to be blinded by 10,000 times as bright TV. It means that your TV is going to hopefully be, potentially hundreds or thousands of times more efficient, because it can display the same image with not nearly as much electricity. So, if you ever feel bad about leaving the TV on at night or something like that, it would cost, think of like 1/1000th of the electricity to run something like that. But of course, that's just for the display, nothing. But yeah, Ralph.
Oh, yeah. And Ben, another technology in terms of the commercial world, driving on the highways around here, I'm seeing more and more of these fully electronic billboards, if you want to call them that, gigantic displays and so forth. This kind of technology could probably revolutionize that in terms of cost and performance as well. So there's giant displays on buildings, all kind of theater displays. Maybe this could come into your cinemas, movie houses. Who knows where this may go? Yeah,
of course. Those giant displays, and using as much electricity as a display much smaller. The importance of that's very important. But like those billboards, they are so distracting. Like when they change from one image to the next, or they start moving. I don't know how they put those things near highways, but either way.
Yeah, you're right.
And for those who are just watching the video portion, and we covered this, I was actually part of one of our other correspondents. He runs a show and a podcast, and I was on his podcast to kind of cover CES. And we covered, Ralph, this was C-Seed, and which is a not very good name, but they covered this product at CES.
Wow.
This is a
That's so cool.
165-inch television that actually folds out of the ground, and they have different models that are indoor, outdoor, 100-inch, 165-inch. It's almost like a piece of art. So,
super cool.
Yeah, there's like, when it comes to display technology, CES is probably one of the best, places to go for that kind of thing. Ralph, you can have this, only $300,000 for the base
problem.
Model. So, yeah, of course. Just a house coming out of the floor.
Gosh.
There's some cool stuff.
There's a market for that. I'm sure there's a market. They're showing properties that are at a level of the kind of income and resources that could afford this.
Yeah, I don't think we will ever see that, unless it's at CES, like on the display floor, we won't see something like that in person. But still, very, very cool. Okay, so that was story number 2. Story number 3, we're going to jump right into it. And this has to do with a technology that I think, bar none, has made the most headlines about what it could possibly do. And I'm not saying that like it's in like, that's kind of the cool part, Ralph, is like you're putting up all these projects that are like, it's going to revolutionize lighting, computer, surgery, medicine, cancer research. It's like, it's going to revolutionize every possible thing. But the one thing holding it back is it's really, really hard to make at scale and in a laboratory. So it really is a miracle material, but you can't make a lot of it. So,
you're right.
It's still cool to hear the research. So let's get another one.
Yeah. So what Ben's alluding to is the ever amazing graphene. We've, over the past 5 years, graphene this, graphene that. For a while, it was even more covered than artificial intelligence, which of course dominates everything now.
Yeah.
But graphene is something that researchers have been playing around with, and what can we do with it? Oh, it has these properties. It might help here. It might help there. And to Ben's point, it's been kind of restrained by realities of deployment or manufacture and so on and so forth. But this one really caught my eye. Here's this headline: World's first graphene semiconductor could power future quantum computers. And the subhead here: scientists overcame a limitation in graphene, which we were just alluding to, this whole challenge people have with graphene. Has so many great properties, but it has also limitations and challenges. So scientists overcame a limitation in graphene to harness the material as a working semiconductor at terahertz frequencies with 10 times the mobility of silicon. We'll explain what mobility means in this context. I got this from livescience.com, wonderful website. Again, we have links and everything. Come out to computeramerica.com, go to the Ralph Bond tab, get the show links. You can dive deeper because this story, I think, is really cool. So here we go. An international team of scientists from China and the Georgia Institute of Technology in the United States have created the world's first working graphene-based semiconductor, which could pave the way for chips that power much faster PCs and even quantum computers in the future. So this is early. I'm not saying it's there now, but this is a breakthrough in research technology. So a side note, if you want to understand what a quantum computer is, come out to the show notes. I have a side note here that explains all this and so on and so forth. But here we go. The new graphene-based semiconducting material made from epitaxial graphene, a particular crystal structure of carbon chemically bonded to silicon carbide, allows for more mobility than silicon, meaning electrons move with less resistance. That's what they mean by mobility. Electrons move with less resistance. So a little background here. Transistors made in this way can operate at terahertz frequencies, 10 times faster than the silicon-based transistors used in chips today. As the researchers wrote in a study published the 3rd of this month in the journal Nature. We're talking about, 3rd of this month. This is really fresh stuff here, folks. And just a quick reminder, semiconductors have properties of both conductors and insulators. At the right temperature range, electrons move through the semiconductor material, but only if a certain amount of energy is applied. So there's a little reminder. Almost every chip today uses a semiconductor made from silicon. We all, I think, know that. But the material is reaching its limits. These limits include the maximum speed at which transistors can switch between their on-off position. That's what a transistor is. It's an on-off switch. So they're reaching the maximum speed at which transistors can switch between their on-off positions, the heat they generate through resistance, and the smallest size people can make them. This means the rapid advancements we've seen throughout the history of computing and production of semiconductors are beginning to slow. And I inserted my note. This, of course, is all talking about Moore's Law, which basically said every 2 years the number of transistors on a chip would double. And for a very long time, that basically has been true. But they're saying, we're hitting a physics wall, a reality physical barrier that we just can't go too much farther on.
Right.
Now, enter graphene. Graphene, meanwhile, is made from a single layer of carbon atoms tightly bound in a hexagonal lattice and is better conductor than silicon, meaning electrons move with less resistance through the material. That's one of the key things here. And despite its favorable properties, graphene has never been harnessed. Graphene has never been harnessed in electronics because of the lack of a band gap. Oh, forgive me, I know this is geeky. Which refers to a minimum amount of energy needed to move electrons when an electric field is applied to it. Band gaps are what enable transistors to switch on and off. So the problem has been to date, graphene just couldn't deal with the band gap. Well, until now. To function as a working transistor, graphene must be treated in some way, but in the past, this has damaged its properties. So people have been trying to do this, but so far have failed because they wound up damaging the graphene, okay? Now, here's the big deal. But the researchers, this team from China and the Georgia Institute of Technology worked around this challenge by fusing graphene onto silicon carbide using special furnaces and a special heating and cooling process. Wow. By putting atoms on the graphene that donate electrons to the system, which is known as doping. And if you're in the semiconductor industry, that's a very familiar term. So again, by putting atoms on the graphene that donate electrons to the system, which is known as doping, they created a functional graphene semiconductor with a band gap that could accomplish this band gap challenge, which again makes it possible to create a working semiconductor at terahertz frequencies with 10 times the mobility of silicon, 10 times the ability for electrons to pass unrestrained. Isn't that something? Wow. Wow.
There's a lot of science there. And
yes.
And what I was kind of alluding to at the very beginning, talking about graphene and, how it can do anything but leave the laboratory. All of these breakthroughs are very true, like they're very honest, and they're going to happen one day. It's just once you figure out how to make this stuff and make it reliably and cheaply, or at least somewhat affordably, Ralph, it's almost like you have all the research done. Now you just need the material. Like you know that this stuff works. It's just once you get your hands on the material, you're good to go. So that's going to happen eventually. It will.
And you make a great point, Ben. One of the things that I don't recall the article getting into, and I didn't pursue this line of questioning myself, is great that you can do it in the lab and it works and it's impressive. Can it be scaled to a manufacturing level? Is it something that's cost effective to produce relative to today's traditional silicon-based chips and so forth? TBD.
Yeah, I think the very fact that they said this could work on supercomputers, and the fact that every time that a new supercomputer is built, you hear about it on the news. There's like a ranking of like the top 10 supercomputers and kind of what they do. Right. And, spoiler alert, they're all like either in China or the US. They're probably not going to be in your cell phone or in your home computer anytime soon. But this may help supercomputers, which actually, kind of plays into story number 4. Supercomputers
Yes.
have done such immense work in your day-to-day life when it comes to drug research, drug synthesis, when it comes to even like weather predictions. And, I know that the entire country has been experiencing crazy weather. And Ralph, like I'm such a spoiled child that like I pull up my phone and I'm like, what do you mean you can't tell me exactly the weather in 48 hours? Am I going to get snow or not? And like, that's how kind of like used to the breakthroughs that I've kind of gotten, that I'm like, I want to know what the weather is going to be in 2 days. Like that, it might affect my plans one way or the other, but we have come to rely on this powerful technology so much, and it's still giving. There's still new discoveries to be made with the technology, even before you get to graphene and stuff like that. But still, my point is, I love technology, and story number 4 is a really good example why.
It sure is. And before we go to story number 4, I absolutely love your line. Graphene can do everything except leave the lab. That's hilarious. That would make a great, wouldn't that make a really funny geek t-shirt slogan?
Yes.
I just think, because people in the know would just laugh.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I digress. Let's go on to story number 4. What Ben and I like to do at the end of our technology trends and science trends segments each Friday is usually I look for something in the medical technology world, because that's near and dear to my heart as far as my body goes, being a petri dish for so many medical activities over my lifetime. But the headline here, and I do want to warn you, this is super geeky. It's deep in the weeds, medical technology and research. So I'm going to forewarn you, this is kind of bends my mind a little bit here, but bear with us and we'll try to plow through this. The significance of this is so important. So the headline here is, new analysis of cancer cells identifies 370 targets. We'll explain what they mean by targets. Identifies 370 targets for smarter, personalized treatments. Subhead, cancer drug discovery accelerated as hundreds of overlooked targets are prioritized. And this comes from a very, very deep in the weeds publication called news-medical.net. Really cool. Okay, so here we go. A new systematic analysis of cancer cells has identified 370 candidate priority drug targets across 27 cancer types, including breast, lung, and ovarian cancers. Wait a minute. First thing I said to myself is, and the article just assumes you know what they're talking about, right? Because of the nature of the publication and the audience intended thereof. I said, wait, Dorky Ralph, I need to know, what drug target? What are we talking about? A drug target can be thought of as a dartboard, okay, where the drug molecules are the darts. Stay with me on this. Strong, accurate binding of a drug to its target is important for successful activity, meaning successful therapy or whatever it's intended to do. By analogy, hitting a high-scoring section of the dartboard, like the bullseye in the middle, helps to win the game. The drugs that bind strongly and selectively to their biological targets are analogous to a dart that sticks firmly to a dartboard in a high-scoring position. Okay. The problem to date is that many drugs bind weakly, as in weakness, to a number of targets, giving rise to both desirable and non-desirable side effects, depending on your situation. I think for me as a simpleton, the drug target is the drug is the dart, and the target is the target on. Yes. And what they're saying is, when I have a drug that I want to use to go after ovarian cancer, I want it to, do its job, hit the target, right? That's what we're talking about. There's more articles here. I've given you another link to get into that if you.
When you throw a dart, you don't want it, to land on the black section on the outside of the ring and score no points. It's a little sticky and it kind of works, but obviously, it's not going to help you do your mission. So
yeah.
Yep. Makes sense.
That's
good analogy.
Essentially it. So this is a great story because it's another one of these collaborations. I love collaborations. In the most comprehensive study of its kind to date, researchers from the Wellcome Sanger Institute, a world leader in genome research that delivers insights into human evolutionary and pathogen biology, So that's one part of the equation. The Wellcome Sanger Institute. A research outfit called Open Targets is another member of this team. And then a variety of collaborators altogether pooled together data from 930 cancer cell lines. This is very deep in the weeds. They then used, here it comes, machine learning, ding, 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 artificial intelligence, right? They used machine learning methods to find the drug targets that show the most promise for developing new treatments and the patients who would most benefit from such treatments. Wow. I mean, that's very complex. You think about that. They're looking for targets that show the promise for developing new treatments, but at the same time, the patients who would benefit from those new treatments. That's a comparison, I guess you could say, that fascinates me. That's very difficult. Mm-hmm. This involved assessing the occurrence of these targets in actual patient tumors and linking them to specific biological markers and genetic and molecular features found in the tumors. Oh boy, that sentence alone just makes my brain melt with the complexity of what these people went after. Well, the findings published the 11th of this month, folks, in an outfit or an outlet called Cancer Cell, we have the link in the show notes, not only bring researchers one step closer to producing a full cancer dependency map of every vulnerability in every type of cancer, but help guide focused efforts to accelerate the development of targeted cancer treatments. And I have a link to learn about what is cancer dependency map. That's fascinating in its own right. Check that out if you go to the show notes. And with over 20,000 potential anti-cancer targets in the genome, determining which are suitable to target for specific types of cancers and patients is a significant challenge. That's what I was alluding to before. This double thing of identifying the targets and then which patients would benefit the most is wow, I mean, that's just overwhelming challenge. In this new study, the research team set out to narrow down potential drug targets by analyzing data available from the Cancer Dependency Map project, which involved CRISPR technology to disrupt every gene inside 930 human cancer lines one at a time. I should say that sentence because I botched it here. By analyzing data available from the Cancer Dependency Map project, which involved CRISPR technology to disrupt every gene inside 930 human cancer lines, one at a time. Oh my goodness. They were able to produce the most comprehensive view of potential new cancer targets to date. Don't worry if you haven't understood this, because I certainly don't fully get it. But it just means, Ben, we will conquer cancer. I may not see it in my life, but we will. I'm convinced of it based on this kind of research and artificial intelligence helping out at every step of the way. Wow.
AI has done so much for cancer research. There was an article that I tried to find while you're doing the story. I couldn't find exactly the article I was thinking, but they were using like chemical compounds, and they scanned like over 1 million different kind of configurations, formulations,
permutations,
permutations of these compounds. And like machine learning is so good at that, where it takes just a ton of data, and like Ralph, for a scientist, they'll kind of look at one of these slides and be like, okay, well, it doesn't have an extra thing here, and it probably can't bind with that. So next, like even if it took a human like 5 seconds to just kind of write off, like just by looking at the chemical structure and saying, that probably won't work. Like 5 million seconds, and that's assuming perfect accuracy that the scientist knows what he's doing. Like that would take someone, what is 5 million seconds to hours is like what 1,500 hours or something like that. Like Ralph, like that in like a machine learning algorithm can do that within minutes. That's the kind of breakthrough is you take all this data, in your article, 20,000 different, kind of setups, millions, thousands, tens of thousands. And even if it's simple enough, on a case by case basis to be able to look at the whole picture, and then for them to narrow it down to, what was it, like 900, no, I'm sorry, that was the cancer lines, narrowed it down to 370 different drugs. very, very important. So now, of course, I can just focus on that. So.
Yeah. And it reminds me too, Ben, I wish I could recall the exact story, but I think, I don't know, maybe it was last year, even the year before, there was some research in chemistry where they were trying to look at different compounds, different what-if combination compounds. Mm-hmm. And I think if I recall right, they said the artificial intelligence-based, very powerful computer did what would take a scientist or a chemist 4,000 years to do, and did it in like a few hours. Yeah. And it's that kind of thing that's just so encouraging. And again, folks, about artificial intelligence, we hear so much about the negative. Negative in the popular media, it's all about, AI is going to ruin screenwriters, and AI is going to do this, and AI is going to take your job away. And I'm not dismissing those concerns. They're real concerns. Don't misunderstand me. But on the other side of the coin, which is a bigger, fatter side of the coin, positive, amazing positive possibilities for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, there's a reason that the technology is taking, really everything by storm. It's and by the way, just as a complete aside before we kind of wrap it up here, Ralph, I do find it fun that when I was first doing the show and going through the technology headlines and so on and so forth, that automation, because obviously in manufacturing plants, automation, machines, robots, did take a lot of jobs, but at the same time, manufacturing jobs still exist, and there's still a need for people in the workforce that go in and kind of do things. But I do find it fun that back then we were saying, the creative jobs, the songwriters, the artists, the screenwriters, the humanities are going to be future proof. They're very human. You can't replicate human with that. And then it turns out ChatGPT comes out, and all of that's flipped on its head. And it's like, do we even need screenwriters anymore? AI makes the next Marvel movie so much better, and stuff like that. I don't know. I just kind of found it funny that technology kind of switched it on us. We thought, the CEO was going to be, the last position in a company. Turns out the CEO was the first one to get replaced with an AI. So who knows? With that being said, though, ladies and gentlemen, there's tons more context to some of the stories that Ralph, put out there. And even though at the end, you may notice it doesn't just stop at story number 4. There are honorable mentions. So Ralph includes these. These are not that they are worse than any of these other stories. It's just, we try to cover 4 to keep the time, crunch to, keep it to a listenable format. But these stories are still very much worth your time. So please, Ralph.
Yeah. So we'll just give you the headlines and the source. Go to the show notes. You can get the links and dive in deeper. So the first headline of the honorable mentions, as Ben was saying, these are stories that are important. We just didn't have time. Headline: solar paint technology could be cheaper alternative to panels. And we have talked about solar paint in the past, but this is a new advancement in this area. It comes from a source called The Cool Down, which is a fun web resource. Next headline. And this one was very important, but kind of flew under the radar of the mainstream media.
Very fitting, considering what it is.
Yeah, NASA and Lockheed Martin reveal the X-59 quiet supersonic aircraft. Very, very significant aviation technology advancement story. And I don't recall ever seeing anybody on the regular news get into this. And so you can check that out. And then the last one I believe here is new artificial intelligence is fast and accurate at detecting COVID-19 from chest x-rays. So they can just take an x-ray of your chest, run it through this AI program, and it can very accurately say this person does or does not have COVID. So very helpful medical technology advancement there from the Northwestern University in Illinois. So very cool.
Yeah, and just as a side note on that one, they say that, it's not that you go in and get an x-ray immediately, you cough and it's like, oh no, chest x-ray. They're saying that, if you're in the hospital and you happen to have a chest x-ray, they can kind of catch it before anything else.
Exactly.
So very, very cool. And of course, all these stories are very cool. So ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check those out, computeramerica.com. We'll have a link right there, of course. And, Ralph puts all this up on his own website as well. But ladies and gentlemen, it will be available on YouTube, wherever podcasts are heard. And of course, you can hear it on Spotify and, all that and more. So with that being said, Ralph, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And next week, we're going to have a bit of a kind of scheduling conflict, but Ralph's still going to put together show notes. So if you want to find out more, you can head on over to our website and catch those next week as well. So Ralph, that means that we'll probably catch you in February. Wow, this year's flying by already. But so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, Ralph, and everyone out there for tuning in. Thank you. We'll catch you here next time. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.